My dad was actually a professional goalkeeper. He played in Greece. I didn't know that for a lot of my life. I was really, really big into sports from as long as I can remember, tossing a football around with my dad. And as I got, a little older, basketball and soccer became, my more serious sports. And my dad never wanted me to choose soccer because of him. So he actually, even though he would give me little bits and pieces of advice, for soccer, I'd be like, what do you know, Dad? And he would never say, oh, I played professionally. Like I kind of know what I'm talking about. Because he never wanted me to choose soccer because of him. He wanted it to be my own path. I got to the pros and I went to that first day of camp and I was like, I tell the story a lot, but I was like, everyone in my life lied to me. Like, I'm not actually good. Like these goalkeepers are good. Like I am not good. I am so far from where they are. So I remember coming home from, that first day. I think we had a couple sessions that day and calling the people I love and being like, I can't do this. I don't belong here. Like, there was an assistant coach there that told me, I don't really think this is like, we really appreciate how hard you work and whatever, but I don't think you're ever going to really make it in the pro league in the US. I think, maybe you could go to a lower team overseas or something, play a couple of years and call it. And, I think that's the reality. The higher and higher and higher level you get, the more people are going to doubt it until you do it, but for me, it was just, let me see how good I can be. I believe I can do this.
Step into the world of FC Game Changer, the football club that will change your game. We want to help boost your mindset, strength, and nutrition. A potent trio capable of completely transforming both your football performance and your overall life.
The way we play it, the way we say it.
With a new expert every month, including strength coaches, nutritionists, football coaches, former and current footballers. We are dedicated to sharing knowledge and skills for the next generation of footballers, allowing you to become the best footballer you can be. Thanks for joining us today. Now, let the game begin.
Michelle Betos, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is an absolute pleasure for us. I'm super excited to speak with you, to learn a lot more about you. Such an extensive career in football, which is something to respect and appreciate, because we all know how hard that is, especially to maintain yourself at that, the highest level. So thanks for joining. And we're going to talk, about a lot of things here. But before we get into, details, learn more about you, for people that don't know you, tell us your story and who is Michelle Betos?
Okay, yeah, I'll do my best. I grew up in Queens, New York, to, unbiasedly, I think the best family in the world. So I was just truly lucky. Incredible parents, grandparents, like big extended family, Greek and Italian family. So food and love, is all of my childhood. My dad was actually a professional goalkeeper. He played in Greece. I didn't know that for a lot of my life. I was really, really big into sports from as long as I can remember, tossing a football around with my dad, playing with my uncles, things like that. So when I was really little, for as long as I can remember, I played baseball, basketball, and soccer. And they were everything. All I wanted to do, all I ever wanted to do. And as I got a little older, basketball and soccer became, my more serious sports. And my dad never wanted me to choose soccer because of him. So he actually, even though he would give me little bits and pieces of advice for soccer, I'd be like, what do you know, Dad? And he would never say, oh, I played professionally. Like I kind of know what I'm talking about. Because he never wanted me to choose soccer because of him. He wanted it to be my own path, which was really cool. So I grew up, just honestly really blessed. A lot of great opportunities, some great coaches, some great mentors. Went to the University of Georgia for college, which was a huge culture shock. I was very much a city kid. But I went down on a visit, fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the team. The goalkeeper coach was exactly what I was looking for in terms of, seeing my potential, but also, ready to challenge me. So it was just a good fit. played there for 4 years, and then tried to play pro. When I was growing up, part of the reason I was so big on basketball is because I saw the WNBA. I saw my dream in front of me, but there wasn't really a stable soccer league. And it wasn't until I was older that, there were really professional soccer leagues. And then when I was in college, the WPS was in, its first, second year. And then when I came out, I went into a camp with Boston, like a preseason camp. And, getting serious with soccer kind of later in my life. I was more like 14 when I was like, okay, this is going to be my sport. I had kind of like a rapid rise, and, did well pretty fast. And then, had what people considered a good career in college. And then I got to the pros, and I went to that first day of camp, and I was like, I tell the story a lot, but I was like, everyone in my life lied to me. Like, I'm not actually good. Like, these goalkeepers are good. Like, I am not good. I am so far from where they are. Alyssa Nair was the goalkeeper at the time, obviously one of the best to ever play. So I remember coming home from, that first day. I think we had a couple sessions that day, and calling the people I love and being like, I can't do this. I don't belong here. Like, you lied to me. Like, why did everybody trick me? And it was kind of that day that I realized I had a decision to make. Like, I could either, call it quits, walk away from, a good college career and, move on, or it was just going to take another level of dedication and just like every single bit of me to close the gap of where I was and where I wanted to go. And yeah, I think it was in that moment that I just decided, okay, like whatever it's going to take, I'm going to do it. And I don't know what that's going to look like. And, 15 years later, that was my process, every single day, just how do I get better? How do I close the gap? Like, the gap was so big. So like, what are the smallest steps I can take today? And then tomorrow, and then the next day, if I would have just looked at the extent of it, I think it would have blown me away. But once I had a true picture of how big that was, okay, like, what is something I can do today? What is something I can do tomorrow? Like, what does a life look like of somebody that is trying to achieve that dream? Like, I think someone, sports like early in my career said, make your days reflect your dreams. Every day somebody should be able to see you and see what you're going after. And so, yeah, that's the story of my career, and I set so many goals for myself. Some I achieved, some I didn't. Some things that I've done in the game I could have never imagined. But, I think the biggest thing for me in my career was just I really feel like I maximized myself. I maximized my potential. I did everything I could. And really going into my pro career, I knew that the one thing I didn't want to walk away with was regrets. Like, every day, no stone unturned. Like, I did everything I could. And then what I achieved. But, when I walked away from college, I felt like there was more to give. I could have done more. I could have given more. I could have, grown myself more. And there's, a lot behind that. But so with the pro game, I was just like, okay, let's see, and it took me on, a crazy journey I never could have imagined. And I think it allowed me to do so much in the game, but it also just, helped me grow into somebody I'm like really proud to be, and somebody that, I'm proud of my own journey, but also hopefully, have and will continue to play a big role in other people's journeys. And I think, that's a big part of my why, a big part of my purpose. So yeah, just, a kid from Queens who, chased a crazy dream and got me here today.
That's just, there's so many lessons in everything that you just told us right now that, let's try to break it up just so, the young athletes, because I do think that from everything that you just told us, they will learn so much. Going back to your dad, right? And even a little before, because you said baseball, basketball, and soccer. Let's talk about the three sports that you played, because I think what the US does super well is that ability to provide to kids to play several sports as they grow up, right? And you as a goalkeeper, I don't think there are better sports besides the game of soccer than baseball and basketball to help you with that. How much of those two sports helped you to become a better goalkeeper in soccer?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're everything, in terms of the development. I think especially now, the reality of the goalkeeper is you're playing multiple sports. You are a shot stopper, you have to be explosive, you have to be quick off your line. You also have to read the game, and then you have to be a field player with your feet. You have to be agile, you have to be quick, and I think so much of basketball and baseball translated into that, I mean, just hand-eye coordination, obviously, for both of them. But, basketball, you're moving your feet quickly on defense. You're having to pivot to change direction, to be explosive. Baseball, I think, honestly, in terms of goalkeeping, probably the biggest thing it did for me is like the focus element. You might not be involved immediate, as a baseball player, you might touch the ball in the infield. I was a catcher, I was a first baseman. And you may not touch the ball more than 3 times as a first baseman, but those 3 times have to be the most important things you do, so just staying locked in, you're not batting every time you're up. So, how do you prepare for your moments? And I think that really translates to goalkeeping. And, for me, obviously, when I was a kid, I was just playing because I loved it. I wanted to play sports all the time. It was just something I enjoyed. So, I think playing 3 sports too, really helped me not burn out. I didn't play soccer every day, all day.
Yeah.
I would go to basketball practice and then I would go to soccer practice, and it would, change the way I thought, and different people, different coaches, different lessons, and while the mechanics of sports are different, the sports, the characteristics, the personal development, carries over in all the sports. So you're going to face adversity in different ways. And yeah, I think they were huge. I think that, and the reality is I didn't play soccer seriously till I was 14. I had a goalkeeper coach.
That's amazing.
My mom tells this story all the time. Somehow they asked me to go try out for this soccer team. And it was a 2-hour drive, and my mom and grandma were in the car, and I was crying, telling them they were ruining my life. All I wanted to do was play basketball. Why are they making me go to this tryout? Like, I just want to focus on basketball. And I went to this 2-hour tryout. It was the first time I really had like a very good goalkeeper coach. And within that 2 hours, I just learned more about the sport, the position, and myself than I had ever. And it was a tryout. So at the end of the session, I remember thinking like, oh my God, I hope I made it. I hope I made the team, which, going there, I didn't want anything to do with.
Crazy.
And then after training, I told my mom, oh, I made it. And she was like, okay, did you tell them, sometimes you're going to have to miss for basketball depending on when practice times are. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Like, we'll work it out. And she was like, what just happened out there? So for me, I think the thing that allowed me to, go into this position without, much goalkeeper training and do well was basketball, was baseball, was my like athleticism and ability to read the game and read the flight of a ball and, things I developed in other sports that then made me maybe a good candidate to develop because I wasn't, there by any means.
Interesting. And that's cool that you mentioned that, before the session, the tryout, you did not want to go. As you get there, you train. That just tells me that the coach was a key player here too, because you could have had, like you did, the best experience, learned so much, but also if you wasn't, someone that you like to train with, or the experience was negative, that could have been, reinforced that feeling that you had prior to going to that tryout, to be like, you know what? Yeah, I hate this. I told you guys I did not want to come, but it flipped. You came out of that tryout loving the game, which it's super important as well in terms of coaching styles, how to coach kids. And that was, for you, was that a key moment to get you to buy into the game, which is, a lot of people can't thank that person, that coach, that day, that experience, because that brought you to this beautiful career that you've had. That's amazing. Your dad, you said, so it's very interesting to me. You said you always liked to be playing sports, basketball, baseball, soccer came later, and you said that your dad did not want you to follow his footsteps in terms of playing soccer, but parents, your mom as well, did they always push you to play sports, or is that something that it was just your personality, the person that you are, that always wanted to play sports?
Yeah, it was me. I mean, I think that was the thing. Like, I always wanted to play sports. Again, like I said, we got this little toy football in like a claw machine when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and all I wanted to do was throw it and catch it and have my dad like throw it so I could dive on the couch and crouch,
So
dive
cool.
on the couch and catch it. And, I was like 3, I was so little. It was just my mom was talking about this recently, but I would watch wrestling and run off the couch and jump on the floor and say, "Daddy, boom," and just, I was just, that was what I wanted to do. I think I started like playing official sports because a boy that I was friends with in my kindergarten class was going to sign up for baseball. And so he was doing it. So I wanted to do it.
Mm,
I was just, kind of following the pack. But then somebody was playing basketball. So I was like, oh, I want to try that. Oh, somebody's like playing little league soccer, rec soccer. Oh, I want to try that, and that was the thing my parents always said, like, they were never going to push me. They never, and I would just ask, oh, I heard there's another team. Can I go play? Is there another team? Can I go play? Oh, I got an offer to do this. Can I go play? And it wasn't easy. I was an only child, which made it a bit easier, but I mean, it's not at a small cost that you
yeah.
play, a bunch of sports. And my parents had to make a lot of sacrifices. When I was about, I think 12, my mom stopped working because she couldn't physically get me to all my training sessions,
Wow.
with her working hours and my dad's hours and stuff like that. And, they always made it work, but I know it wasn't always easy. But it was just something they just saw that I loved to do, something that I excelled in, and just probably more than anything, just the place I always felt the most myself, the most confident, the most joyful. So they were always going to support that. My mom, when I was really serious about basketball, I would take 1,000 shots a day. We had a basketball hoop
That's
in front of our house, and my mom would rebound for me. And I'm sure there are 1,000 other things she would rather be doing. But her and my dad, they would switch off, and they'd be like, okay, now it's raining, like time to go inside. And I'd be like, no, I have 200 more to go, and they just supported me. And I think the biggest thing, and I saw my friends actually, they would have all these personal trainers and things like that.
mm,
And it was kind of not what they wanted to do. And I remember having conversation with my mom, like, why don't you push me like them? And she was like, I'm not going to push you, like, this is, if you want something, like, then we'll, do our best to support it. But, this is going to be you, like, we're not going to push you. And I really think even that tryout is such like a outlier. And the reason she did it is because she thought I would enjoy it, because
mm.
she thought that it would be something I would do. And, you don't always know for yourself as a kid, but never, even when I was throwing my tantrum in the car, she was like, if you don't like it, you don't have to go back. I'm just telling you, try it. Like, I'm not signing you up. I'm not making, like, it's always been up to you. My dad was older when I was a kid, and he had terrible knees. I mean, when he was playing, there wasn't, the same,
Mhm.
medical support and stuff like that. And so, but because I was so late to soccer and I had to, catch up, I would get my dad would drive me to the field at 4:30 in the morning.
My God.
I would wake him up. He would like roll out of bed, drive me. And then, again, his poor knees. And I'd be like, if you love me, you'll kick the ball harder. And, I mean, I have so many regrets now. I don't feel proud of it, but, he did it for me because I wanted to. He helped me shovel a 6-yard box when it snowed so I
So
could do my footwork in it, and it was just, they were going to do whatever it took to support me, but they were never going to lead it. It was always
yeah.
what I wanted. And I think that was always really special because it made it mine, my ownership, my joy, my decisions. And I'm so grateful for that because I've seen, a lot of different scenarios where it is parents pushing it,
I was
or,
gonna ask
it's
you.
not true, joy. And then even if they did like it a little bit, they end up hating it, or they end up
Mm.
not enjoying it because it's something that they feel like they have to do instead of that they want to do. And I just never had that experience.
So interesting. You pushed your parents much more than they did
Yep.
push you. One key word that you said that I loved is support. You always wanted this. You pushed them because you wanted to play sports, and they never said no, or they never blocked you from wanting those things. And the support that it didn't matter, mom had to quit, work to be able to make you work for you. Like I said, the budget, it's not easy and cheap, but they made it work for you, always supporting you in that, you wanting to play sports. That's amazing. I actually, I don't know if there are, research on this, but you'd be fascinating to see parents that support kids in what they want to do versus parents that push kids in what they think the kids should do. That would be, we might know the outcome in terms of burnout, not, liking the game or not liking whatever sport that is. But in some occasions you see, let's say Tiger Woods, you see some, but that also comes with that mental lack of stability almost that they create, because it's too much, sure. Right? It's too much. I love that. That's amazing. And then, okay, so 14, so you started late. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I coach, I train with, kids here in the area. I'm in the Eugene Springfield area, super close to Portland. You're familiar with Portland. Mm-hmm. We're going to get there. Mm-hmm. A lot of kids, they think that, at a certain age, it's game over. They're finished. But in your case, you're 14. That's basically when you took soccer serious. And Jesus Christ, look at your career, the career that you had. So what can you share with the audience here in terms of, it's never too late, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think something I feel so strongly about is everyone's path is different. Like, I think in sports and probably the world, but in my experience in sports, it's so much comparison, so much like, oh, this person did it this way, so that's the right way. Or there's this system that leads into this system, and then this goes to college, and then college to this. And it's just, the longer that I've played in this game, the more like incredible athletes and, people I've met in this game, the more I realize everyone's path is unique, and I think the worst thing you could ever do to an athlete as a parent, as a coach, is to limit them. I think that happens way too often. I think, see the potential in them, and how do you figure them out? Meet them where they are. Maybe they're 14, maybe they're 4, and I think, it's kind of gotten a little crazy. A lot of young players are going pro, and that's incredible. That might be that one player's path, or those 10 players' paths, but that doesn't mean if you're going pro when you're 23 that's not also amazing, or whatever your unique story is. But I think, I don't know, I just think the reality is, like, everyone's path is different, and I don't ever believe it's too late. I think even with goalkeepers now that I'm working with, like Ryan Campbell, who's a rookie, there's something she's extremely so gifted at, and there's some things, like, just the reality of her path, she wasn't taught yet. So, like, we meet, instead of saying, like, oh, you can't do this yet, that's crazy. It's like, no, we see where you are. We see your gifts, we see your strengths, we see where the other things are, and then we're just going to bring them up. I think there's just always opportunity, and everyone's going to show up differently. And I think to limit someone based on how they show up versus what they're willing to put in and what they're willing to do and what their limits are, like, go maximize their potential. I think, yeah, just to me, I think it's, don't compare. Your path is always going to be unique. And I think just embracing your path, embracing where you are, and working from theirs, I think the biggest thing. Yeah.
And I think you had mentioned that before, that I want to go more in depth in that too. You mentioned, but that came after college, but you did say that you even wish you pushed harder, you trained more, you took more advantage of those 4 years. So we're going to get there, but now, okay, 14, and then what brought you to the University of Georgia? How did that process happen and that's more so for players aiming to play college soccer right now?
Yeah, to be totally honest, my path was kind of wild. So that was about my freshman year. I started playing on a really good club team. I hadn't been playing on a serious club team. And I was actually talking to colleges my freshman and sophomore year for basketball and soccer then, because I was still very serious about basketball. I remember, again, I had just started with this really good club team, probably had been training now seriously for about a year as goalkeeper, and opportunities really opened up. I think that to me is one lesson in all of it, where my path might have been different. I think sometimes we get so focused on the how And I don't think that's our responsibility. I think it's like, just focus on what you can control. I think when you really focus on developing yourself, like growing yourself, like maximizing your opportunity right in front of you to get better, I think then things fall into place. I think when you start to attach to, oh, I have to go to this school, or I have to do this one thing, or I have to do, like, this is the way it happens, I think you can really waste a lot of energy. But I think when you just focus on yourself and improvement, things work out the way they're supposed to. So, for me, I was just trying to get better at the sport that I fell in love with, really late in life, or late. And then I showed up to a soccer tournament in Disney. It was like a big tournament at the time, a college recruiting tournament. And I remember the game was about to start, and there were about 27 coaches just like lined up behind my goal. And I was like, oh, geez, wow, okay, like this is real, but I didn't feel that pressure at that point. I just was like, and I think, again, because I was serious about multiple sports, but also because I was like having an exciting time in my career. I was just enjoying it. So I was like, I'm just gonna enjoy it.
That's
I'm gonna
awesome.
put on a performance. I'm gonna go after it. And I actually remember that game. The first pass back I got went under my foot and almost in the goal. And I was like running back to the goal, and I see all these coaches lined up. And I literally put my hand up. I'm like, don't worry, I got it. And just like, retrieve the ball and whatever, and went on to play a really good game. And actually Georgia was one of the coaches there, and he had, the goalkeeper coach at the time had watched me a bunch. And when they actually, made my like actual offer and, tried to get me on campus, they said, look, or he said, the thing that really excites me about you is obviously we're recruiting a lot of talented goalkeepers, but what I saw in you is you made a mistake and then you rebounded from it so quickly. You made a mistake, and it wasn't even just that. It was another one. It was this rainy game. I came for a cross. I dropped the cross and they scored. And instead of getting upset at myself or not playing well, I, again, with the coach that I met when I was 14, who to this day is actually still a mentor of mine, like through my whole pro career and everything, like changed my life. She had taught me about body language, about how I carry myself, like focusing on the next play and things like that. So in that game, that's what I did. My team went on to win 2-1. I played a great game. And he said, that was the moment for me, not the great saves, not, the things I knew you could do. But when I saw you make a mistake and come back, like I knew you had the mentality. I knew you had the, the right head for it. And I knew you were gifted enough for us to develop. And in that moment is when we decided to give you this offer. And for me, that was really exciting. And actually, I wanted nothing to do with going to the South. I was like, that's far. I'm from the city. I want to stay. I want to be close to home. I have a big family I'm close to. And my club coach at the time wouldn't stop bothering me about just go on a visit. Like, just go on a visit. And he actually knew the goalkeeper coach from another team or something. And he was like, you're going to love him. Like, just go on a visit and I'll leave you alone. So I went on a visit. My mom was not thrilled about it because it was so far from home. And again, we're a big, like tight-knit family. And she said she saw my face when we got there, and we talked to the coaches, and I saw the campus and the facilities. And then for one of the like dinners, she went to dinner with the head coach and the assistant coach, and I went to dinner with the goalkeeper coach. And when we came back, like when we met up again, she was like, I knew it was a done deal. And basically I just said, like, I think the thing that sold me there is that he saw potential in me, he valued me, but he also like pointed out my flaws. He talked about what I would have to work on to be successful. He, like held me to a standard that I wasn't already at. He saw what I was capable of, not where I was at. And he was going to push me. He was going to be hard on me. I think for me, the coaching style I always enjoyed when I was a kid was, having a baseline understanding that they believed in me, but then pushing me for more, not being settled, not, and so, yeah, it was just his coaching style, the way he approached me. And I was just like, this is the place I want to be. I can't really think about anything else. And so, yeah, I ended up going. It was a huge culture shock. It was a huge surprise.
Yeah.
Definitely not what I would have guessed, but yeah, I think it was an incredible decision.
That is absolutely insane. I mean, yeah, you're right, though, that it's not that, what happened to you for you in terms of that path to get to, college soccer That doesn't mean that if that worked for you, that's going to work for, every single player. But it's just, it's good to share in terms of giving them a roadmap to, a way of getting to college soccer. But it's just amazing the impact. The more we talk, the impact that your coach at 14, she had on you. And you even mentioned that she's still a mentor, even at the professional level. So this is so important for parents to listen, choosing the right coach or being aware of who is coaching your kids, and even for, the older kids too, to pay attention to what's going on during training. What's the impact that they're causing? Is it negative? Is it positive? Toxic? Because look, the amount of impact that she had on you provided you with the professional career that you have, and even basically the college career that you had. Of course, that you're an athlete, you had that mentality from super early age, but then you find that person that took you to the next level. Because if you did that showcase with all the coaches watching you behind your goal, if after that mistake you allowed that mistake to just take you down and not perform at all and just keep messing stuff up in that game, you guys lose, and that's basically your fault. Look, like, it's so many things that could have gone wrong, but then that mindset piece that, yeah, I messed up, I'll forget, let's think forward, let's think ahead. How much goalkeeping is mindset driven?
I think goalkeeping is 100% mindset. Obviously you have to have a base level of talent and ability and, physical work put in. Like, that's, that goes unsaid, but it's everything. I think who you are, it determines what your output is way more than what you do. And I think, it's how you show up for a game, how you show up for a practice, like, that's going to determine your level of success. So if I come in scared and playing small and not wanting to make a mistake, like, inevitably I'm going to play poorly, but if I come out brave and aggressive and I'm going to be dominant in my six and, I'm going to attack this. And even with mentality, for me, I had to learn in my career for so long, I was a perfectionist and I thought it was great to be a perfectionist, but you can't be a perfectionist. Like, no one's perfect. And I think while you can strive to be like as close to perfect as possible or do as many things well as possible, it's never going to happen. And if you use that as your measuring stick, for me as a goalkeeper, I'd be like, if I have a shutout, then I've succeeded. If I didn't get a shutout, then I didn't, and I think that's such a poor measuring stick because you're missing so many factors. But also the reality is, in a game, you could give up a goal in 2 minutes. You could be down 1-0, and then do you decide then that you've already lost, that you've already failed? Like, you're going to set yourself up to, never perform well. So for me as a goalkeeper, one of the biggest things I tell young goalkeepers now is your job is to keep the game winnable. It's not to have a shutout. It's to keep the game winnable. So no matter if you make a great save or you make a huge mistake or something in between, it's just, what do I do next? How do I keep this game winnable? How do I keep it? What's the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, next play? I think goalkeeping is about being present in every moment, and not ever getting too high or too low. I've always thought about it, forwards, they score, or field players, they score, they get to celebrate for a few minutes, they run around, the whole game stops. As a goalkeeper, if you make a great save, you're probably going to see a corner in the next 30 seconds. So you don't really have time, maybe you can celebrate for a half second, but like, you have to refocus right away. And that's the life of a goalkeeper, and it's the same thing. If you make a mistake and you drop your level, you drop your focus, in the next 30 seconds, it can become 2-0 and then 3-0. And then you're beating yourself up and digging yourself into a bigger hole. And it's like, I think so much of goalkeeping is how quickly can you get to the next moment, no matter what has happened.
Yeah, no, that is so cool. That is so cool. You mentioned field players. It's almost it is basically a different game that you have to play as a goalkeeper, not just in terms of what you do on the field, but mentally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's It's awesome. This is, I mean, it's even helping myself because I'm a field player. You know, when I play, I was never a goalkeeper. I'm a midfielder. But I can even see, you know, because mindset goes for everyone on the field, right? So I can see how much that could influence and help the entire team to, you know, win a game, win games, win tournaments. You know, it's awesome. Okay, so successful career at University of Georgia. You said, I wish I could push more, train more, do more. And then you get to that next level post college and you say, you guys were all lying to me. I'm not as good as you all told me I was. So then again, mindset, right? How don't you allow to trick yourself into thinking that, yeah, you're not a good goalkeeper? Yes, I believe in this story now just because I'm seeing goalkeepers that they're in a different level, different stage of their careers. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that you could get there also. So again, it goes back to the mindset, but how do you keep yourself motivated?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I mean, like I said in the beginning, like I think I'm really lucky because I think I had an incredible support system that believed in me no matter what, that always saw me as something bigger and better than I could ever see myself. And that was my parents, you know, even to the point where, you know, I'd fight with them about it, you know, but they believed in me so much that even if I was, you know, pushing it away when I was a kid, saying, no, it was my fault, or no, I'm not that good, you know, it seeped in there, you know, and so I think at the core of myself, I've always believed in myself. And I think that is because I was, you know, raised to do that. But I think I think for me, it was just about a growth mindset, and it became less about, oh, I have to be as good as Alyssa or as good as this person or that person. It became more like, I want to know how good I can be. Like, I know I'm not there yet. I know I'm not even close to my potential. And there might not be a lot of people who believe I can do this. You know, the reality is when I was in Boston, there was an assistant coach there that told me, you know, I don't really think this is like, we really appreciate how hard you work and whatever, but I don't think you're ever going to really make it in the pro league in the US. I think, you know, maybe you could go to a lower team overseas or something, you know, play a couple of years and call it. And, you know, I think that's the reality. The higher and higher and higher level you get, the more people are going to doubt it until you do it, you know? But for me, it was just, let me see how good I can be. I believe I can do this, you know, and, you know, I'm really grateful that I did, but it was just, it was just a belief in myself. And it was just, how do I get better every single day? How do I measure my own success? You know, success doesn't mean, oh, I've made this team or I've played this many minutes or I've started this game. It's like, what do I measure as success? What do I measure as growth? What do I evaluate every single day? And like, let me make my own system of wins. You know, how do I win today? How do I win tomorrow? And, you know, it's really easy to get caught up in the global sports. You know, you win or you lose. The scoreboard says it, the minutes say it, you know, the role or the salary or whatever, you know, there's all these measurements that externally are put on us. But I think for me, it was just creating an internal reward system of, am I growing? Am I getting better? Am I this? And of course, like, I'm a competitive athlete. I wanted to play. I wanted to win. I wanted to do all those things. And those were also driving me. But I really think it was just like the growth mindset that, you know, every single day I was going to get better and pray about it and let go of the rest. You know, that really was my process. Control what you can control and trust the process of the rest. And, you know, when I look back at my career, there are so many miraculous little moments, you know, things that shouldn't have been that were, opportunities I got. And, you know, I really do think that is, you know, a combination of, you know, just doing every single thing I can, but also, you know, like, trusting that you're meant for something and, you know, going after it. And, you know, I think, forget who said it, but it's like, the harder I work, the luckier I get, you know? And sometimes it is really doing it in the dark, you know, it's having, you know, faith in the unseen, you know, versus the seen. It's really doing things that you just, and then just trusting, you know, it is a leap of faith. I think that's the biggest thing. Somebody asked me recently, like, how did you know you were going to be a professional in your career? How did you know this was going to be for you? And I was like, I never knew. You know, you never, when you're chasing like things that the 1% are doing, you never know, you're just brave enough to go after it wholeheartedly, knowing you could fail. Like the likelihood of failure is probably greater than the likelihood of success, but you're doing it anyway. And that's kind of just been my journey.
I really like that. I really like that in terms of, you had mentioned this in the beginning as well, in terms of not focusing in the global, like basically the end point. You basically created this internal competition within yourself. And because you just, every single day, you kept working. It didn't matter what people tell you. It didn't matter. Yeah, you had that vision, that goal to become a professional player. However, that never distracted you from putting in the work today. Today could be far from that goal. And I think it's a good reminder, because a lot of young athletes, young players, they do have the goal because they see, right? They see the professional players playing. They see the cars they drive, the salary, all the accolades, right, that come with being a professional player. However, they don't match their everyday with the goal that they have. But now with you basically telling us to focus on today what you can control, which is basically yourself, your training, everything that you can possibly do to match the actions with the goal that you have. It doesn't matter what the goal is. The goal will be, if people have achieved, possible. It is possible. So I really like the way you broke that down. That's going to help so many athletes, and I really hope that they're watching, listening right now, because this is what I think they need to hear. Because yeah, just dreaming, having that big goal is one thing, but matching the actions to get you there is a complete different ball game.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean this is awesome. So then, okay, you made it. You made it to we talked about getting you to the goal, which is to become a professional a footballer, professional goalkeeper. What does that feel like with you getting that pen and signing that contract? What's that feeling like?
Yeah, I mean, there are little moments in my career where I can reflect now and like in those moments see like, wow, this is really happening. Signing my first contract, getting my first start, certain things happening, signing for this team, becoming captain of this team, like little moments where I would take that second to be like, whoa, like I'm doing it, I'm really doing it. It's happening, but I think most competitive athletes will tell you, it's, you get that and then you want more. Okay, now what's next? What's next?
Yes.
And so I think for me, it was a balance of those two things. I think because of the journey I went on, because of the work and the adversity and, the ups and downs, it's not like, oh, I just made it and then it was smooth sailing from there, like that's just, I don't think that's anyone's journey. So I think for me, I did have those moments of celebration and like, again, support system, people who were on the ride with me being like, wow, like you're doing it, it's happening, and it's easy to get caught up in, okay, but now I want this and now I want that and now I want the next thing. And I think, the reality is most of us at this level are driven that way. But I also think, yeah, there were so many moments, but honestly, probably not till I was really nearing the end of my career that I started to think, wow, I could be okay with this.
Wow.
Like, wow, I did it. I can say I did it. And that didn't really happen for me until towards the end when I was starting to, feel the feelings of, okay, maybe I'm done. And, what is this? And like, I think for so long, this like drive for more, this like belief in more, this, just maximizing my potential and stuff like that wouldn't even enter my head. There's still more to do. There's still more to do. There's still more to do. And there's still more in me. And I think, coming to, the end of my last season and really being like, okay, like if I walked away today, I could say I did it. If I walked away today, I could say I'm proud. And that was everything to me, and I think then, heading into my retirement game was in May.
This year, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this past May.
yeah.
Yeah. And it was probably the first time I really was like sitting, reflecting on all the little moments. 15 years is a lot of
It's a
things have happened.
lot.
And when you're in it, you kind of you keep moving forward, you take it in stride, you move forward, but like really sitting, reflecting, feeling, it was surreal. It's surreal to think about what I've been able to do, the opportunities I've had, the people I've met, like the places I've been, and things that, like when I was 14 or I was 4, and if you would say to me, this is what your life's going to be, like, you're going to do this, like, I would have been like, well, that's incredible. So I really think it was more towards the end that I could really, really appreciate that. But I did have those little points along the way for sure.
Wow. Yeah, it's I mean, it's almost, that it just says a lot about you with that. Yeah, you signed that first contract, celebrate, next day wake up, okay, so what now? What am I achieving next? And that's very interesting to know that, by the end of the career, only 15 years later, just only 15 years later, that you come to that, realization almost of, wow, look what I've done. It's very inspiring, actually. And I think the reason why as well that you were as successful as you have been, I think it's because of that too, because I feel like, let's say, maybe some athletes, as soon as they sign that first contract, they think they made it and that's it. They celebrate, they don't, because you tell me it might be even harder to maintain you at that level now than it is to get there. Is that correct?
1,000%, because I think the reality is when I started on this journey, the improvements were so drastic, right? Like, okay, I'm eating better, so my body's going to look different. I'm working out differently. I'm doing this with my kicking, like when you are at the beginning of any journey, it's like, people who are on weight loss journeys or whatever, the beginning is easier because it's like, I see all of it. Yeah. Like once you get into the bulk of your career as a pro, like the vast majority of the improvements and the things you're gaining are inches or centimeters, where like it's not like everybody's coming to be like, wow, like you look so different today than last week, or it's just you every single day. Did I get one step further on that push to that dive? Like, did I strike the ball cleaner today? Like, did, this little thing? And I think that is when it's harder, because it's not as obvious. And it even feels like, because it's such little things every day that you're committing to, like, oh, does this one thing even really matter? But it does, and how that one extra rep, that one extra meditation for me, the mental side of the game was so huge for me. So like every little thing I did, I committed to, because I knew the little things over time make a big difference. But when you're in it, it's really hard. Yeah. It feels like, am I even getting anywhere? And, you're going to go through the ebbs and flows. And yeah, so I definitely think once you're, kind of in that phase past the beginning and you're in the bulk of your career, like at the highest levels, like it is harder because it is such incremental things every day and it's not as obvious.
It is. So you almost don't see, right? Because it's tiny. So it's almost discouraging because you almost don't feel like you're making progress. Yeah. And people around you are working as hard as you are. Some people working harder, and it's, the level is just a different level. Wow. So, I mean, the career basically started 2009 all the way to 2025, right? So Atlanta Silverbacks back in 2009, all the way to Gotham FC, where you retired.
Yep.
There are so many teams that you played with, including, River Plate, which, it's definitely a complete different experience, different game as well. I wish we had time to dive deep in every single team that you played with, but let's basically bring you to where I am. Basically, I'm in Oregon. I'm in
Mhm.
Eugene, the Eugene Springfield area, and Portland Thorns. That stadium is a beautiful stadium. I've actually played in that stadium, which was an experience. And I love watching Portland Timbers and Portland Thorns games because the fans, I don't think they are better, more exciting fans in the league than they are. But we all know it's growing. Things are getting better in every single state, every single team. First, before we talk about the Portland Thorns, talk to me about being the first NWSL goalkeeper to score a goal in league play. Break that down for me.
Yeah, that's something people always want to talk about. And, for me, it's one of the hardest because I was almost not there. I was in a complete, what I would say now was like a flow state. We were, I was just in the game. We were losing 1-0. And such little time was left, so it was just the natural thing to ask, can I go up, like, how do I help us get back in this game? And until I watched the video after the game, I didn't really understand what happened. I remember Allie taking the corner and just kind of standing in a space where nobody else was. And the next thing I remember is being on the ground, looking at Sinead's face that looks like shocked and celebrating. So I'm looking at her, I'm looking at the goal, like the ball's obviously bouncing around. I look at the ref, and then there's the realization, like, holy, did that just go in, and it's complete shock. And again, like, been a goalkeeper my whole life. Like, I immediately think we have to get back to protect the goal. I don't understand. Like I said to you, next play, what do we do next? And so, everyone, when you watch the video, I just take off sprinting back to my goal, and I remember all the girls are obviously jumping on me, and Allie Long, runs behind. She's grabbing me by the neck and she's like, where are you going? I'm like, we got to get back. And she's like, no, we don't. But I'm like, I just can't understand that. It just doesn't compute to me. And so, yeah, I get back, they kick off. I think I said this recently, people don't realize, like, Kansas City hits the post. Like, my team was so unfocused, like, they kind of dribbled through us. I think it might have even been Erica, like, they hit the post, whistle blows, and then in that moment, I think I just, like, collapsed, and I was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was unreal, I mean, like you said, the fans were incredible, like, walking around. I don't know if I've ever, like, smiled that much. Like, I felt like I was on another planet, and yeah, I was telling this story recently, but my mom was in the stands.
Oh, wow.
And I was trying to find her in the stands, and I found out a bunch of the fans had taken her to a bar already. Like, she was like, I was trying to call her. She's like, they took me to the bar, whatever. Like, they're trying to buy her shots. It was the Saturday before Father's Day. And my dad was at work. So I called my dad. He was crying. He was screaming. He was like, this is the best Father's Day gift ever. I mean, it was just insane. I couldn't possibly fathom in the moment what it would be or what it would mean to me, to my teammates, the fans, like, my family, everybody. It was just, yeah, absolutely unreal. Just such a cool experience, and just the amount of people that have been like, that was my first Thorns game, or that was the first time I watched the NWSL, like, I've been watching it since. And and yeah, just the way it impacted people was probably the coolest part. I think for me, it was just, life is so weird. I've spent all the time that I can think of just trying to defend the goal and never thinking about scoring a goal. And, this is the biggest moment that everybody want to talk about. So yeah, it was absolutely insane.
It's, it's funny because I've watched that clip, I don't know how many times. But it's so interesting because throughout the whole conversation that we've been having, that clip summarizes basically everything that you've told us here today in terms of highs and lows, the next play, because it's so interesting. It's a corner kick she crosses it, and then it's a second corner kick. I don't even think you touched the ball in that first one.
Not the first
and then
one.
she takes it again. That's when you're by yourself, basically. Beautiful header, right? And then I think it gets to someone bouncing, and it's a goal, right? But your face, if you just freeze your face, you're like, oh yeah, it's not a goal, or is it? You're looking at the referee, almost just trying to check, and you're not even thinking about celebrating, even when you knew it was a goal. And it's funny, like you're saying, you're just like pretty much telling everyone, guys, let's go back. You're just doing let me get back to the goal. It was so, I mean, I can't get enough of that clip, because it's, you know, you as a goalkeeper right there, and that just focus of, yeah, I did score, but what's next? Let me get back to, you know, my job here. Let me go back to the goal and keep saving everyone from, because it was 1-1, right? 90th minute, 1-0 Kansas City. Yeah, you tied the game, and then you guys, you tied the game. That, wow, it's such a nice thing. Such, like you said, and the experience as well, like what you've provided to the fans, to people that might be still watching the Thorns or watching soccer because of that day, because of you. It's such an impact. Oh my god.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, life in Portland with the Thorns, enjoyed it. Good, you know, highlight of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, like, there's a lot of history there that, you know, is on the darker side of the league, but I think for me personally, I think Portland is where I really feel like I grew up. You know, I have such, like, Portland is one of the markets that we, you know, travel to, where I always feel like, oh, this was home to me. You know, this was, you know, I think, you know, it was early in my career, and I had come from Seattle, where I played behind Hope Solo, and then my first year in Portland, I played behind Nadine Unger. And honestly, the two of them were obviously two of the best in the absolute world at the time, and also had such different styles. And I feel like playing behind the both of them, I remember thinking like, oh, this is like an apprenticeship, you know, like I'm taking a bit of this. Oh, that, I love that she does that. Can that work for me? Can that work for me? You know, and then working with Nadine, the same thing, like getting both from both. And then, you know, feeling like Portland, you know, 2015 was me coming into my own, you know, taking the bits of everything I've learned and like going for it, you know, getting, you know, becoming a regular starter, you know, like winning things with the team. And yeah, just so embraced by the fans, again, in the high and the low. Like, I felt so supported, so seen, so believed in. It was just such a special place to play then, especially, you know, because their fans have been incredible this whole time. You know, now other teams are catching up and incredible markets and stuff. But for me, it was like they saw women's soccer for what it was and what it could be, you know, before other people did. And I kind of felt that way personally too. It was such a special place. I felt like I said, like, that was such a turning point in my career. Some of my best friends to this day were from that team. You know, it was just, you know, a lot of great things happening at that time. So I'm just so grateful for that time. I think so much of it formed up the career I did have, but also just like who I became and, you know, the opportunities I had in the league and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it's funny because playing as long as I did, playing in different markets, like, every time I visit another team's market, I think about all the different people I was, you know, all the different versions of myself. Louisville, Seattle, you know, Portland, like those were places I played. And, you know, yeah, I achieved certain things in my career, but I'm also different. You know, you played for 15 years, you know, who I was when I got drafted in Seattle, who I was in 15, 16, 17, you know, like it's so many different lifetimes, so many memories, you know, so many, you know, really like formative experiences. So yeah, so Portland is a place that will always like hold such a special place in my heart.
Yeah. No, that it, you know, especially after, you know, getting the starting position, you guys won in 2016, right? The Shield, which is absolutely incredible. And 2015, was that when you received the league? No, wait. Was that the goalkeeper of the year? So that was as soon as you started like being the number one starter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a big deal, huh? Coming off of Hope Solo and Nadine, that's I'm sure that you learned so much from the both of them, because both legends of the game.
Yeah.
And that's cool too that you just mentioned that you picked, you just picked things that you thought could be something that you could implement within your game, like a toolbox to make yourself a better goalkeeper. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Portland, again, if we take the time here to talk about all the teams, we would have a 2, 3, 4, 5 hour episode. But let's jump straight to Gotham FC, and let's talk about that experience, that transition to getting to Gotham FC, to being the bottom team of the league to becoming the champions. What was it like?
Yeah, it was insane. I think for me, there, like I said, there were different things in my career that I achieved in different moments. And I think for me, I was co-captain of that team, and, Gotham's my backyard, and I think that for me was just another like insane experience. I've spent, going back to college, I spent so much of my career, miles upon miles, thousands of miles away from my home, away from where I grew up, away from my support system, and obviously they were incredible and traveled everywhere I've been. But for me to come back and end my career at home was a dream come true. Yeah. That felt so special. And then to win a championship, be co-captain of that team, captain the team the next year, like those are things that, yeah, they, they're not on the stat sheet in the same way, but they meant so much to me. It's so much like pride and joy and gratitude for that. And yeah, it was just incredible. I think that team was really special. I think obviously everyone had written us off, and it was just such a good group. It was obviously new staff, new, kind of a whole new transition, and to be able to do that so quickly. And it was in a crazy way. We snuck into playoffs. We finished our last game of the season and we're watching iPads on the field, and as soon as the game ended, we found out that we snuck into playoffs because of one goal we had scored. That was the difference. And so it was crazy. And, but like, I feel like a lot of teams then would have been like, wow, we made the playoffs, and I think for us, we were like, okay, we got to win 3 games.
Yeah.
Like now's the opportunity. All we have to do now to be champions is to win 3 games. And obviously that was Ali Krieger's last season, and we all supported her so much. So it was just such a cool experience getting behind somebody personally, representing the place I was from, and then, yeah, achieving, almost the impossible, just, yeah, an unforgettable experience.
Yeah, I can't. We had Coach Juan Carlos Amoros, and we had that talk, and the things that he shared with us in terms of accomplishing that feat, that almost, like you said, impossible. It's cool because he never takes credit for none of that. He always puts it back on you guys, on the team, on the staff, on the club, and how much they believed in him as well to give him, the freedom. And yeah, that's just it's history, because you can't erase that. It's crazy. I didn't know about that detail though. That one goal that took you guys, that gave you the opportunity to go and play that last 3 games. And oh my God, what, I'm sure you guys were just buzzing the whole time, and just like, okay, if we have this chance here, the opportunity, let's make the most out of it. And you guys did. And you guys really did.
I think it's everything we've been talking about too. It's like every little thing matters. You might not think in a 3-1 game that 4th goal matters, or that last minute save that, changes goal differential matters in the grand scheme of things, right? But it did, and I think one of the most exciting things about the NWSL, why I think you see so many people around the world come to play in this league beyond like the obviously level of talent, is it's so competitive from top to bottom. And so I think it's so fun to play in because every game you have to show up at your best. Every little thing matters, like everything matters. And I think, Juan and his staff coming in that year, I think the greatest thing they did was come in and give us an identity. It wasn't just a bunch of good players, coming out. It was like, this is who we are and this is who we're going to be. And this is how we're going to show up every day. And I think, being as a player now, being on the coaching side, like I really recognize like how important the symbiotic relationship is. Like it takes both. You can have an incredible coaching staff, but if players aren't bought in and they're not bought into each other and they're not invested, like you're fighting an uphill battle, and vice versa. If you have a great team but you don't have the right staff, then it's kind of fighting an uphill battle. But when those two things can be joined, you can maximize potential. And I think especially a place like the NWSL, that's what it takes. It doesn't just take talent, it doesn't just take a good coaching staff. It's really like getting the best you can get, and then how do you maximize in every moment. And, I think, that's something that we were able to do that year, is like get the best out of everyone. And, go in doing it our way, and be really firm in that and really together in that. I think that was probably the most important.
Yeah. So just, yeah, you're right. It summarizes everything that, going back to what you said, doing the every single day, not seeing the results, but even though you're making tiny, progress each day. Not because if you guys were looking into just, let's make the playoffs, that's the goal, and focusing far away, maybe, that you wouldn't have that one goal differential that could have taken you guys to play in the playoffs. Yeah, it's so fascinating, so interesting. Yeah, so then retirement. What when did that click? When and even why? Because, talking to you here, in terms of fitness, I might be wrong, but in terms of mentality, you probably had 2, 3, 4, 5 more years in the tank here. But when did that realization come to you to be like, yeah, I'm gonna retire?
I think it started to creep in kind of towards the middle of 2024, so last year. Just the idea, kind of what I was saying earlier, like, okay, I can be done, okay, I can be proud. Oh, like, wow, I really have done a lot, and I think kind of in an organic, like subtle way, but, just, evaluating things and, opportunities and things like that, just feeling like this feels different, and I think that's the only way I can describe it is, and then just kind of sitting and exploring that. But also, I'm really try to be a present person, kind of where my feet are. So it was something that kind of crept in, but it wasn't something I was going to give a lot of energy, like kind of like, okay, but, training today and how do I be my best today, and, something I always said is like, until the day I retire, I want to be learning, I want to be growing. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, you're a veteran goalkeeper, so this is where you are or whatever, so I still approached every day. Like I had 10 more years left, like, how do I get better today? How do I take this opportunity, whatever it is? And, but kind of had that playing in the back of my head. And then when the season ended, really taking some time with it, and honestly, in the off season, I still trained like I was playing the next year because I didn't want to close the door till I was 100% sure. So, the people that were closest to me, I was telling, I think I might retire, but then I'm, training 2 times a day, 6 days a week. My girlfriend's like, what are you doing? Like, which one is it? And I'm like, until I'm sure, I'm not stopping, and I had kind of talked to Gotham about, the opportunity that I'm in now, which is working with the goalkeepers and kind of being on the culture side. I'm getting my master's in applied sports psych. So
Awesome.
It's always kind of been, I've never known exactly what I wanted to do next, but I know I love working with goalkeepers, and I know I love like the mental performance culture, like that kind of side. And, talking with Gotham, that was something that they kind of were like, look, when you're done playing, whenever that is, that's not a now, that's a when, this is something we see for you. And I remember hearing that, and it was probably the first time I'd felt a joy and excitement about something that I do about playing. And I wasn't sure if I was ever going to have that about anything else, honestly, because this is all I've ever wanted to do for as long as I can remember, to be a pro athlete, and then it to be pro soccer and things like that. So I think that was interesting to me because I had never felt that about anything else. So I was like, okay, like that, kind of seems cool. And then, you know, if I'm being totally honest, I think what I've said this whole time is like, I've always wanted to, like, I think I'm upset more than like soccer itself or more than whatever. Like, I'm obsessed with like growth and learning and like extension of self. And I love sports. Like, I will always love soccer. I will always love sports, but like this never ending ascension of versions of myself and things like that. And something that I started to feel a bit last season, and then, you know, in this off season, is to really put in the work that I've always done in terms of getting better physically and expanding my game. Like, I couldn't push my body in the same way. I could, in that I could mentally push through. That's never been an issue for me. Pain's not really something that's ever stopped me, but like my knee was giving out, you know, little things with my body. And I was like, if I can't keep getting better, do I want to keep doing this? You know, what am I still doing this for? And I think that's when I really started to give myself the time and the space to be like, okay, what's left for me? Like, what do I still need in this game? And I think it was the first time that I was like, I don't know if I need anything, you know, and that's okay, you know, and it's uncomfortable to me and it's scary. And I think honestly, so then the reality is I accepted the position at Gotham like January 14th and started working January 15th, because until then I just wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to like say it. Like, I just didn't know how to know. And then I started doing it and I just loved it. You know, a lot of challenges, a lot of different things, like refiguring out my purpose. How do I eat? How do I work out? Like, what is my driving force every day? You know, that was like a total paradigm shift for me. Something I'm still figuring out, honestly. But honestly, probably the best thing that happened to me is in April, I ended up becoming a player again. I don't know if you knew this. So two of our goalkeepers, which this was not a good thing that happened to me, but two of our three goalkeepers in one training session got injured. Shelby tore her UCL in her thumb, and Ryan sprained her AC joint.
Oh my God. So you're basically the third goalkeeper in that case.
So, well, we didn't know that. I didn't know that. So basically I was just working and they got hurt in training. But like, you know, goalkeepers get hurt, pick up injuries a lot because, you know, what we put our body through. So I don't think anything of it. I'm like, okay, they're going to be okay. Like, Shelby probably needs to tape her thumb, and, you know, Rye's shoulder will be okay. And then we were at lunch that day, didn't think anything of it, just assumed they were getting treatment. And then Juan called me and said, hey, I need to talk to you. Where are you? And I was like, oh, I'm coming over. Like, what time's the meeting? He was like, no, I need to talk to you, and I need to talk to you now. And so I walk in his office and he has papers and he's like, so Shelby's going to be out for a bit. We don't think Ryan's shoulder is going to be okay for a little. We have a game on Sunday. I need you to be available as a player.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what? And Brody was sitting there and I was like, who's our goalkeeper coach, our head goalkeeper coach? And I was like, and he was like, are you okay with this? And I was like, yeah, like whatever you guys need. So then the club did this whole thing, like for one night and one night only, Michelle Betos is back, like, you know, whatever. It was just going to be for the Sunday, right? And then we'll figure it out. And, you know, Rye will be back soon, whatever. It turns out to be a month. We have 3 games on the road. And then what was always going to be my retirement game was May 4th. Mm-hmm. So it ended up being that literally that player contract ended on May 4th. So I was available for that game and I just became a player for a month. They had to technically fire me as a coach because I couldn't have dual roles.
Yeah.
I had to sign a player contract. Then they had to, you know, on May 5th, they reinstated me as a coach. And yeah, for a month again, I was living as a player. Oh and I God. Think And at the time, I just thought it was like, what is life? Like, this is crazy. And I'm just doing whatever the team needs me to do, obviously. But I think now at the end of it, I realized it was just such a gift because while I enjoyed it, I enjoyed diving around and playing because I always will. I was like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I'm done.
Yeah,
like,
reaffirmed.
I don't need this, you know, like this is fun. And I'll always love it, but it doesn't feel the same to me. You know, it doesn't feel like this is what's meant for me anymore. And it was just such a gift because, again, like in a way I didn't have before. I knew it was my last training session. I knew it was my last game. Like, and just, again, this is where I started to reflect on like everything my career had been. And then, you know, I had 60 of my family members at that game and they all wore my jerseys from all my teams, from racing, from Norway, from, you know, all my pro teams, even when I was a kid, my like Auburndale Emeralds, 5-year-old jersey, whatever. And it was this crazy reflection process of like what I had done and what this game had been. And then also like, and I'm done and I'm great. Like, I feel great about it. Everyone's like, how do you feel about it? And I'm like, I feel great. And not because I didn't love every second of it, but because I did it.
Yeah.
And I'm done. Like I did it. I can say I did it, and it was enough for me. And I don't know if I knew I would walk away from my pro career like that, but yeah, it was an incredible experience in that sense. Like, just so much closure and so much perspective, and I'm just so grateful to be where I am now. And I had this incredible journey with people like my coach from when I was 14, Celia, who's still my mentor. I get to be that for other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's my biggest driving force, because I had that, because I know how instrumental that was in my life. Like, I get to be that for Ryan and Shelby and Anne, and for all our players in different ways, and that feels like my purpose now. How do I help them on their journeys? How do I help them maximize themselves and find the best versions of themselves? And so, yeah, it feels pretty awesome,
Oh my God. Wow. I had no idea about that. I had no idea. But it's so many beautiful things that you just talked about, and then going back to your role model, your mentor, your coach, that you found her at 14, all the way to now, and the impact that she caused on you. And then you now seeing what she's done for you and still does, to now you in that position to be able to do the same for the upcoming players. That's beautiful. Gotham FC, being extremely flexible and welcoming in terms of offering you this opportunity to, okay, you're not a player anymore. Stay with us, work with us, help us. That's awesome. One, also trusting you, even though I don't think they had a choice. Maybe they could, hire a goalkeeper. I don't know, but because of the trust, because they already knew you, they knew that they could count on you. That's awesome. And you as well, who knows, right? We will never know. Who knows if, okay, you retired and you're in peace within yourself, and yes, I was done. That was it for me. You coming back and playing that month, it was going to be a game. It turned to be a month. That reassured you, reaffirmed that, yes, I came back for, it was supposed to be a game, now became a month, but no, this is it for me. I think I've given my all. So that's absolutely amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't discussed?
No, I think we've hit a lot. I mean, I think I'm just really grateful. And I think for me, the biggest thing my journey has taught me is just like, for whatever dream is on your heart, or for whatever you feel called to do, like, I think those things are there so that we go after them wholeheartedly, because I think like that drives us to be who we're meant to be. For me, like, the amount of ways I've grown and learned and stretched myself, like, I would have never done if it wasn't for chasing this dream, for trying to become something that required a better, bigger, higher version of myself. And so, yeah, I just think, sports are such an incredible platform. I think, soccer has given me everything. My friends, my family, myself, the best version of myself. And so I think sports are just such an incredible gift. And I think they're meant to be enjoyed and to stretch us and help us become who we're meant to be, to whatever extent and whatever level you play at.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. So we have this closing tradition. We ask the same question to every guest that we have on here. Tell us a game changer moment in your life and why.
Yeah, I think the biggest game changer moment probably the two I've talked about the most. I think it was that decision when I could have given up, or I could have decided to pursue this pro career. I think that changed my whole life. I think that one moment, that one decision of, am I going to do this? And it's going to take something from me I've never given before. It set me on a path that I could have never prepared myself for, but also took so much of myself, something I didn't even know I had to give. yeah, so I think it's that, or I think it's the day I met Celia, you know, and soccer became my sport, you know, and I went from, you know, dreaming of playing in the WNBA to becoming a goalkeeper and, you know, chasing a pro league that didn't even exist yet. You know, I think those two moments, they changed my life. You know, they were game changers in what I did and who I became.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Michelle, where can people find you?
Yeah, just Instagram. You can find me on the bench at Gotham games. Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, not really, but mostly just, yeah, Instagram, and that's about it.
Okay, and yeah, let me know when you guys come to Portland. Last time you
Okay.
guys did, I came and watched. Juan hooked.
Okay.
He hooked me up with some tickets, so I came. I drove up and had a great time. Just I hadn't watched the team play, and I did see that kind of identity that you guys have as a team.
Mhm.
That kind of Spanish kind of flavor of keeping the ball and playing through the back, and even involving the goalkeeper with
Yep.
a lot of, you know, the strategies that you guys perform and play. So that was awesome to watch. It was a great game, by the way. And that stadium is just, it's always
Yeah.
good to be there. And I just wanted to say thanks for, you know, everything that you shared with us today. I think a lot of people will be able to learn so much. I did, and
Thank you.
I'm super grateful to have you on, and for sharing all the things that you did with us today here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was fun.